morning and welcome again to another edition of the Liberian Diaspora Forum Weekly Talk Show. My name is Kafumba. As usual, I will be your moderator. It is my pleasing pleasure to welcome our second guest of the day, Honorable Judge Melvin Johnson, in connection with Liberia Airport saga. Like our first guest, Honorable Johnson will also be speaking to issues of corruption and, of course, his latest secret recordings released this time involving a member of the Senate, Judge Johnson. It's my pleasure to welcome you back to the show. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you to your staff for the opportunity to be here. Thank you to the listening audience, Liberians and friends of Liberia. Most of all, thanks to Almighty God for the strength, the privilege to still be counted amongst the living, and I look forward to the discussion today.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. I got some questions lined up already, and I'm going to still go ahead and invite the rest of you, especially those of you who don't come here often, who just joining us for the first time. Now that you are already here, if you have any question, comment, or concern, all you have to do now is to dial *61 on your phone, and then that will jump your number over to my question area, and then I will know that you want to participate, and I will give you the chance to do so. Thank you. I see questions coming. Thank you. That's how you do it. *61. Before I do so, let me ask Judge Johnson the first question for the night, which is perhaps the easiest one. Honorable Johnson, I had the privilege of listening to the latest recording, the one involving, I think it's Clarice Jar of Magibe County. Personally, I do not find that recording as compelling, as the last or some of the previous ones. But of course, there are valuable information in there. But I guess my question is, how do you think this latest recording will help this your fight against corruption? Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. If I may, let me just quickly summarize sort of how I got to the airport and how we got to that recording. I had started a business called Action Foods in Liberia. Pursuant to that business, I was importing in Liberia smoked fish, pig feet, salt pork, pigtails, etc. That business started in 2006. And as many of you know, when you have a business in Liberia, it behooves you to be there often. And so that made me to go to Liberia on a quarterly basis at least. So I was traveling back and forth since that time to Liberia for that business. I had some other humanitarian interests. We had done some project with the University of Liberia. I had an orphanage there as well that I had adopted, as well as a large family, excuse me. And so for those reasons, I was going back and forth to Liberia. 2012, October, I believe it was, I go home and I literally meet Ellen Corcoran there at the airport. We were introduced. She told me what she was there to do. I believe she had just been in the country about a week or two. And so we exchanged contacts. We started talking about Liberia, the future of Liberia, etc. I knew ahead of time that Musa Ability was in Liberia and working with the airport because I had interacted via my work as an attorney, my capacity as a lawyer. I had interacted with his family here in Georgia, as I have with many Liberian families. And so, long story short, the board of directors at the airport, comprising of 7 people, including the transport minister and Ambassador Edward Dunn, various other dignitaries and officials on this board, they passed a resolution for me to serve as legal advisor to the airport. they saw it fit because obviously it's an international airport. We've got international clients such as Delta Airlines that's based here in Atlanta where my practice is. And so for those reasons and others, they saw it fit for me to serve as legal advisor to the airport. That got me involved working at the airport, working with Ellen Corcoran. While we were working at the airport, Ellen Corcoran and I primarily, we began to discover various improprieties that were taking place, as we commonly call corruption. For instance, the airport has a gas station that was purposed to fuel the airport vehicles and machinery there at the airport, but we soon quickly discovered that that gas station in part was being used by corrupt officials to literally fuel their own parallel gas stations and fuel some of them their gasoline business. And so we clamped down on that. We instituted a new logging system whereby every gallon of gas before it was pumped at the station, the recipient of the gasoline would have to record the year, make, model, and especially the mileage of the vehicle, along with some other information. And that report for the week, we mandated to be on Ellen Corcoran's desk at 9 a.m. Monday for the preceding week. We also discovered at the airport there's a VIP lounge, which is purposed to provide drinks, refreshments for VIP guests traveling to and from Liberia. The airport provides those drinks and refreshments on a complimentary basis. When I audited the VIP lounge, I discovered that in order for the ordered inventory of drinks and refreshments to even halfway comport with the VIP guests as registered by the airlines, each guest was consuming something around 20 Heineken and 20 stouts and just ridiculous numbers, which obviously were not happening. And so we instituted, again, a more stringent policies as far as ordering the inventory, storing the inventory, tracking the inventory. We even went to the extent where we sent out letter to the vendors locally there, apprising the vendor that there was a new management team in town, basically a new sheriff, and we appreciated and valued the relationship we had with them, but we had discovered some stuff going on that we were displeased with. We were not accusing the vendors, but we wanted to put them on notice. We were aware of some things that before we got there, we would wash everything in the sea of forgiveness. But going forward, if we found anything improper that involved a vendor and that vendor did do something improper, we were determined to expose not only the government official, the employee there at the airport, but also and equally we would do so for the vendor. That we urged the vendor to not take it as a threat, that we were serious about progress in Liberia, and we appreciated the vendor's support, blah, 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 blah. Thirdly, Liberia is very famous for ghost employees. For the listening audience that don't know what that is, that's where, for instance, at the airport, if the airport, say, for instance, has 10 employees, the officials would list on the payroll as the airport having 15 employees. And so when we realized this was going on, we sent out a notice to the entire airport employees and said we really appreciated the work they did. Since there was a new management, new sheriff in town, we wanted the privilege to meet each person individually and thank them for a job well done, and, you know, build relationship and encourage them to continue to work hard. And in an effort to do that, we would be present with the paymaster to hand everybody their check and so forth and get a chance to meet everybody. When we did that, we realized that a significant percentage, I think somewhere around 25-30%, of the people on the payroll never showed up for their checks. Of course, it would be quite unusual for people in Liberia under those financial conditions to just voluntarily forego their checks. So these are some of the examples of some of the measures that we took. Of course, that made us unpopular with the officials that were benefiting from those corruption loopholes. the ghost employees, the monies that were recouped from the ghost employees not showing up, we reached a decision to pay the lowest paid employees Christmas bonuses as well as to double their salaries. Those people were making $54 a month. When bag of rice at the time cost $35, at least the rice that I saw people buying, that meant you left a head of a household with $19, and to carry on all the other affairs of the family for the month, of course, that is grossly insufficient. And so we doubled those people's salary with the monies that were recouped. And so immediately, all of this was done within a month or so. Immediately, we became very unpopular with government officials, but very popular, as you can imagine, with the everyday employee there at the airport. We began to hear that government officials were plotting, they were setting for us, as they would say in Liberia, to get rid of us. And so, realizing this, we prayerfully considered the decision of either leaving Liberia and coming back to the U.S. I mean, after all, God had blessed both of us individually. We didn't need to be in Liberia. Ellen Corcoran, for instance, excuse me, had turned down 3 times more money to go to Liberia, 3 times more money here in the U.S. to go to Liberia to serve, because she saw it fit to be a part of the change and to be a part of the new Liberia. And so, long story short, we weigh all the risks involved. Of course, our careers, God has blessed us. Additionally, as you know, in America, to get to those positions, you have to work extremely hard. Ellen Corcoran has 2 wonderful children. I've got 4 of my own. We knew we would be risking those children's lives and future, our families and loved ones. But we came to the conclusion after much prayer and reflection that our people, we often talk about stuff. We're very famous for talking, and very few of us will take decisions and take risks to bring about change and bring about innovation in our society. And so after much prayer and reflection, we decided to take this unprecedented step to go undercover, if you will, and record these corrupt officials in an effort to expose corruption. So we started recording these officials. We eventually met with Brani Samukai, the Minister of Defense. We did not meet with him because we felt he was a part of it. Not at all. We didn't feel that he was a part of it, but we knew that he was the highest ranking security officer in the country, and certainly he had a pulse on most of what was going on in the country. I had the privilege of interacting with Minister Samukai prior to this. His son lives here in the U.S. Again, in my capacity as a lawyer, I had worked with him, and Ellen Corcoran also had interacted with him, and so we individually had relationships that we had established with him, and plus, during the course of being in Liberia, you meet people and so forth. So we approached him. We, approached him as a defense minister. Such and such is going on. We think it's because we're closing loopholes at the airport. We're trying to bring about changes. This should be the reason why we're here. This is what we're determined to do. We realize it's unpopular with officials, but this is the right thing to do. Are you aware of what's going on? We're getting tips and so forth. That was when he revealed to us that, well, I'm fully aware. I've talked to these officials. Essentially, I've investigated. He mentioned Amara Kone, Judy Moore. Amara Kone, of course, is the finance minister. Judy Moore is the deputy minister of state for presidential affairs. Edward McLean is the minister of state for presidential affairs. Musa Ability is the chairman of the board, and so on. He mentioned these people and said he talked to these people, and the real reason why there's this plot to get rid of us was because $130 million was coming to the airport, and these officials did not want us basically in the picture because they felt we would be an impediment for them having access to the money based on the activities that we had displayed within a very short period of time. He mentioned also that these officials told him emphatically, repeatedly, that they can, quote, put their heads on chopping board that we didn't take a dime, but they wanted to get rid of us, and because we were in the way. He then advised that we go to the president and request an independent investigation and audit. He mentioned some other things that will come out on another recording that hasn't come out yet, into some details about the inner workings of the government and some history of how people have been set up, etc. You guys will hear that forthcoming. There's a Brani Sambukai 2 that hasn't come out yet. And so, based on his advice, we were headed for the president of Liberia, Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf herself, to request an independent, non-governmental employee and independent investigation and audit into the matters so that everything would be brought out in the open for the public. We wanted to respect and to observe the chain of command that had been established, so we didn't skip over the individuals of superiors, and so we followed the chain of command. And during the course of following the chain of command, we were visited by Senator Clarice Jai. And basically, Senator Jai attempts to persuade us, and others had done this as well. Some other recordings that are forthcoming as well, you will hear others basically echoing and re-echoing the same thing that Senator Jai says, that they will fix the investigation and they have a way of, making things look one way, basically to deter us from seeking any kind of independent investigation. And then eventually you will hear from your president as well. She will acknowledge sending people to intercept us, and you will hear her in her own voice what she says about fixing investigation in Liberia. And so that's sort of the background of how we got to Senator Clarice Jai's recording.
Okay. Well, thank you for laying that out there. Thank you. Quickly, before I take my first caller here, I noticed during your deliberation you made several references to the issue of doing some legal work in Liberia, legal advisor, and I'm just curious, are you a member of the Bar Association in Liberia as well?
No, I'm not a member of the bar in Liberia, no.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's take our first caller for the night, 6655-6655. Would you please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for Judge Johnson, Judge Melvin Johnson. Hello? Hello, 6655?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, your name, question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson.
Yeah, my name is Edwin Dennis. I'm very much impressed with the level of revelations that have been brought up through these tapes in terms of the inappropriate practices of some of our government officials. And some of these things have been confirmed. Earlier on in a lot of program, we heard Honorable Greaves, when I pressed him about the Justice Administration's report, he also said that report was kind of not serious. So it's like we have this culture that has come to light in our country where government officials, until they are proven wrongly, they will always not admit. Let us, if these tapes were not available, I don't know what would have happened, because most of the things in the case of Representative Fall from Borough Newtown, when the superintendent said that they wanted some money, all of them denied, say it was not true. But when the woman played the tape, they said, oh, he was just joking. So, while it is true that I will encourage Judge Johnson and Ms. Ellen Cochran to avail themselves to the wheels of justice in Liberia by clearing their names, but at the same time, I will also not encourage them to put themselves at risk in terms of the information that has been availed to them as to why they were being sought. But my question is, can Judge Johnson explain to us whether at any point in time, since the Ministry of Justice had announced that they have been indicted, whether they have received this indictment and that they are aware of any extradition process that is in place, because the Ministry of Justice said it and the President said it in your annual message. So can you please confirm whether you have been served this indictment and that you are aware of an indictment extradition process?
Thank you. Where are you calling from again, sir?
I'm in Philadelphia, Edmonton, Philadelphia.
Okay, thank you. Judge Johnson?
Yeah.
Have you received any indictment, and are you aware of any proceeding going on with regard to extradition?
The only awareness that we have about any proceeding has come via the media and, as we say, ELDC. But in terms of receiving any process or service or documents or phone call or contacts or anything to that effect, we've not received any service whatsoever. The indictment, I understand, was issued in May, if I'm correct. From May till now would be approximately 9 months. We've heard twice where an, quote, extradition team, end quote, had come to the U.S. for our extradition. We've jokingly mentioned several times in several interviews that we've been checking baggage claim at JFK for this extradition team because apparently they're lost, or maybe they're in the law library, but, not to be facetious, but we've not received any process whatsoever. We've always maintained with the highest confidence that the indictment was a hoax, that any extradition team announcement was the same to create the impression that something was being done to cover face, to save face, if you will, because we had caught this president and her government with their pants down, and it was an attempt to preempt what they saw that we would do as far as their recordings, to preempt, to tarnish, to attempt to get the people's minds thinking one way so that when we did come out with these recordings, the people would say, oh, no, don't believe anything they say. And clearly, as time goes on, our position gets proven more and more and more, but we've not received any process for any indictment and or extradition.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of extradition and the whole 9 year, since we are there already, I'd like to know, I'm a bit baffled by the way things are unfolding here. I thought that the government of Liberia was supposed to be the aggressive one here. They're supposed to be aggressively trying to pursue you and Ellen Conqueror. But quite to the contrary, it's you. And I mean you, and perhaps I know you're doing this with the support and in consultation with Ellen as well. It's you who's been on the run here. First, Madam Melvin Johnson gives her State of the Nation address. In less than 24 hours, you rebutted to that in the strongest term possible. And then you're on VOA. You're on another show today. Here you are. So I guess. What is the goal at this point? Is this all in an effort to clear your name, or you just? And I understand you've been to the State Department. You've spoken with several senior U.S. government officials as well. So what is the goal here? What precisely are you trying to accomplish at this point, Judge Johnson?
Well, my brother, my name has always been cleared. The work that I've done for many years in Georgia, in New Jersey, in Rhode Island, in Texas, in Oklahoma, serving Liberians, it's always been controversial. And so you get to a point where you're not worried about what people say, about what people think. As long as you know that you're right with your maker and your family's okay, you're able to move on and continue to do the work that God put you on earth to do. So the name clearing and clearing the name, that has never really been a concern of mine. The goal has always been, and the goal continues to be, to expose this president, this government, to bring about change for the betterment of the people in Liberia and for Liberians everywhere. Liberia ranks highest in the region in what they call infant mortality rate. That's a fancy phrase for babies, Liberian babies, unborn and newborn, that are dying every day, every hour from curable and preventable diseases. For me, that picture continues to stay in my head, and that's a driving force for continuing the struggle. What that means for me practically in terms of what corruption is doing, instead of allocating the resources for medicines and hospitals, that means that my children, all 4 of them, are losing potential brethren that are Liberians who would be doctors and lawyers and teachers and journalists and judges tomorrow, and we know not the potential of those children. So we're losing, and we're getting behind and further behind literally by the hour. Ghana in the region there has done very well. As you know, in terms of age, Ghana is a small sister country compared to us, but they're flourishing. While we celebrate, we cherish what they're doing, we know as Liberians that we have pride as a people, we have talent, we have resources, and we feel badly every time some of us go to Ghana and see the tremendous improvement they're making. We wish and we want that for our people as well. Lastly, another picture of corruption for me that is part of the objective. A good friend of mine is working in Liberia right now, and he volunteers part-time at an elementary school twice a week, he tells me. And one of his favorite students, a little girl, I believe by age 7, he goes back this day to teach at the school, and the little girl is no longer there. And he inquires of her peers, and they jokingly say that the tuition dog, I think they said, had bitten the girl. Long story short, the girl and her poor family could not afford 650 LD to continue to have her in this school. And so she had to drop out of school and start selling in the market. And God knows what that will mean for her future and how that will affect us as a people. You're talking 90% or more of our entire population living below poverty, where we have oil, we have iron ore, we have rubber, timber, etc. We have tremendous international goodwill. And so when you ask what is the goal is to expose this government, expose this president, so that we can go forward, and the practical consequences of corruption, we can remove those practical consequences so Liberia can move forward. It has never been, it would never be about my name, because I'm comfortable with who God has made me. God has blessed me tremendously, and so what people think, what people say has never affected or deterred me. I've worked on causes affecting Liberia where I've received death threats. I've gone against police departments where I had to get my life guarded for 30, 40, 90 days because I was receiving death threats, my vehicle being vandalized. I fought for Liberians in Oklahoma where I received threats as well. And so this has sort of been my area, as we said, my era. So, no, I'm not worried about my name. It's for the prosperity of our people, our pride, and our dignity.
Okay. All right. Let's leave it there for now. Let's hear from another caller. 2127. Your name, where you calling from, your question for Judge Johnson. 2127.
Yeah, thank you, Kafuma. Yeah, thank you, Judge Johnson.
Could you please tell us your name, where you calling from, and then you can proceed with your comment, question, or concern?
My name is Mamu Momo.
Okay.
And I say thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you a little badly, though. If you speak a little louder, that will surely help. Where are you calling from, Mamu Momo? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Maryland.
From Maryland. All right. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I want to commend our studio guest for the level of steadfastness in what he's doing. And I want to encourage him not to only think there's a need that he go beyond that. I don't want to say, but as a citizen, as a concerned Liberian has a right to also take action of what he's doing is right, but to do it far away, there must be, like the other time when I was on the show with him, I asked him a question, and he said he was going to think about it. What is the next step? Because to fight outside is like you're not strong. You got to get in the ring before you can get strong. The case has started in Liberia, and the news continue to carry them as part of the defendant in the case that have now appeared, and they are coming out with a lot of stories. I mean, a lot of good stories that Liberians can benefit from. That can bring changes in our country. Not, violently, but most, in kind of informed mind, where people will be educated of what is going on, because not everybody, are conscientized about what is going on in our country. People hear corruption to be the song of the day, so they don't care. But with what is then revealed in their recording and what have you, can serve as a purpose, not only for the president, but for the entire government. Because, as you rightly said, that one of the House representatives made a mockery out of you talking about $500,000 and you making a mockery out of it. Like that was just a joke. So corruption in our country is like a joke. So people are starving, people are not eating, the children do not even have their 3-time meal, and other people they're playing fun out of it. And so there's a need that will move forward. But my question here has to do with do you have a legal representative in Liberia that is representing you in this trial?
Brother Momo, Brother Momo, thank you for the question. No, I don't have a legal representative in Liberia that's representing me. I have not found or saw the need to have one. Usually in such a matter, there would be process that would be followed in terms of service and so forth that would put the defendant on notice that there's a case going on, you're involved, and then at that time the defendant can begin to make decisions regarding that, but no process has been followed at all. So no, I don't have a legal representative in Liberia. I want to speak to something that you touch on, Brother Momo, that I think it's important for people to hear and understand when you talk about being outside of the ring and fighting, basically being in the U.S. and fighting what's going on in Liberia. I think it's important that you know and the rest of the listening audience understand that just as we are exposing corruption via these recordings in the U.S., we started doing this in Liberia as well. Just as we're playing these tapes for the public to hear, we play these tapes on the radio in Liberia as well. We had a huge press conference at Fabric Radio in Sinkor. There were somewhere about 40, 50 journalists from the entire journalism community in Liberia that were present. We began to expose corruption there. After that is when we started hearing about signing our death warrant, and then the police director revealing our safety concerns and so forth. And so naturally we had to be wise. We had to exercise wisdom for our safety. So it wasn't our intention to be out of the ring, so to speak, and fight. It's just that when we were in the ring and we were fighting, the president and her people sought to capture us and basically get us killed. And so, again, we had to exercise wisdom.
Okay. Speaking of playing the tapes in Liberia, I know there was a gag order and then that was quickly removed. So, yeah, it could be playing in Liberia. Before I take my next caller, Judge Johnson, so what would constitute a change for you in Liberia in this matter? Would the change mean the resignation, the end of Madam Ellen Johnson's leave regime, or a different way of doing business? And if it is a different way of doing business, how are we to verify that? What will constitute a change for you with regard to corruption in Liberia today?
Well, that's a good question. It's not an easy question, my brother. But as far as this president and this government, for me, it would mean a change of president and a change of government. The reason I say that is, and your listening audience will understand more as we play additional recordings when you hear different government officials and different levels basically sing the same song about corruption and fixing investigations. And when you finally hear from the president herself and you hear them say how long they all know that the system has been filthy, how long they all know there's not been any investigation, how it would uproot and expose them. And so this is not an isolated situation. This is a systemic stuff that's very deeply rooted. This is something that I have now learned that this president came in as a plan from day one and has carried it out without season. And so I don't see any other way such a person could be allowed, can be trusted any further to stay in a position when you're not talking about an isolated situation, but a definitive plan that has been carried out from day one and continues to be carried out shamelessly.
Okay. And I must say, much to your credit and to our surprise, our first guest today shocked a lot of people. Given the length of time he's been involved in Liberian politics, for him to have started his deliberation saying that he was told to keep quiet, he was made to keep quiet, which he's now ready to speak. I thought that was very shocking to many of us. Anyway, let's hear from another caller. Let's hear from George Toto in Pacebrand. Mr. George Toto, welcome to the show. Comment, question, or concern for Judge Johnson?
Yeah, well, thank you, Kafuma, and also thanks to Judge Johnson. We're listening to the recording the issue of agricultural situation in Liberia, and we'll be having some personal discussion on the issue. One thing that continues to bother me on this issue is that why now? I don't know how long agriculture will. I don't know how long she held the position of Rafi, and how long she served in the government. But most of the time, what brought it back for me is that most of the time, officials, when they're having this position, you won't hear anything about them until certain thing is happening, or either they are released from their position before they begin to speak on ill that in the society. And what really bad for me also, like, why is it that when they are there, when these ill are going on, they don't speak up for the listening audience to know. But whenever they are out, that's the time they want to come out to speak on issues that affect it. We all want reform to be done in Liberia, especially in terms of corruption. It's a big thing affecting the society. But my concern is why not? Why when Ellen was there, when she had the position, she never exposed some of the corrupt officials until she had problems with the government before coming with all the allegations.
Yeah, Brother Toto, I don't know if you were listening earlier when I responded to Brother Momo's comment and question. While we were in Liberia still working, we had unprecedentedly, we had a press conference. At that press conference, the journalism community in Liberia at large was represented. We invited them. We played some of the recordings in Liberia while we were there. We began this process of exposing this president and this government while we were in Liberia, still duly authorized, still duly working. After we did that is when we started receiving the threats on our lives, the vandalism, the threats of other officials to do things to us, etc. And then, of course, we exercised wisdom for our safety and we left. So, again, this is not a situation where we left Liberia and then began to talk about the corruption. This is a situation where unprecedentedly you had officials, people working in with the government, exposing their colleagues on the air in Liberia, and then they get threatened and their lives get in danger, and so they flee for safety.
Okay. Leave it there. Let's take our next caller. This time we hear from Mr. Musa Keita in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Mr. Keita, welcome to the show. Hello?
Oh, okay. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me on your show. And thanks to Judge Johnson for the excellent deliberation, especially the recent recording again. that involves one of the senators, Carija to be specific. Or, like you mentioned earlier, my question is there any way that this discussion or exposure of corruption will come to an end where either the president admits to her problem of being corrupt, or you continue to expose her to her international friends that she claims, that she's friendly with? Because in recent time when she visited Curious Fiatai shop, she mentioned something that sent another signal. She said, when you continue to talk about her, let me just quote verbatim what she said. You continue talking about me more and more people like me like that, and they will say, oh, the book is doing their country, and you'll be harming the country instead of helping the country. That's what she said. And when your reporting came out recently, I read in front page, I said, well, if this is the case, people that are exposed corruption are considered to be enemy of Liberia. What about those that are involved in the corrupt practices and they are claiming to be loved by those that support the country? So what's your take on that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we feel that we're on an assignment by Almighty God to go forward and do this. As I said, we started this with prayer and reflection, weighing all the risks, and we're not going to relent until the assignment is complete. And so, yes, we've made efforts. I've been to England and had meetings there with journalists. I've made several trips, different places around the U.S., the nation's capital, etc., meeting with different people and journalists, etc. And, in fact, this week we've got some trips scheduled as well. This is not something we're taking lightly. This is a cause to which we're committed to seeing it to the very end. As I mentioned, we cannot get the picture of the babies, unborn and newborn, continually dying from curable and preventable diseases. We're hoping at the end, when we meet our maker, that he can say, you know what, I placed this assignment in your lap, and well done, my good and faithful servant. So we will pursue this to the very end. We have contacted friends of the president. We continue to contact friends of the president in America and out of America to bring this evidence to them. Very soon, we will be heading for the Nobel Peace Prize Committee to present this evidence to them, to show them, some of the other additional recordings that have not even been made public yet, and so forth. And so, yeah, this is not something we're taking lightly. As you may or may not know, it's been already a year and 2 months on this cause, and we're grounded. We're ready to go forward. If it takes another 3-4 years, so be it. But we will not relent. We will continue to go forward.
Judge Johnson, before I take the next caller, though, taking that last caller point a little bit further, assuming that you and our last press speaker today, Honorable Greaves, Harry Greaves, succeed in painting this government of Melvin Johnson Sirleaf as corrupt as it is, as corrupt, but more corrupt than anything else, assuming that all of those that are on the battlefront to fight corruption in Liberia, assuming that you all succeed and the international community lose faith in Liberia, and thus reducing aid or taking away some of the grants that are going to Liberia, do you not see how that could harm the very children that you're talking about? Because at the end of the day, that's the old saying in Liberia that when 2 elephant fights, only the grass suffer. The less aid that goes to Liberia, the less, or even the less gets down, trickle down to the less privileged. Ellie Sirleaf will never go hungry in Liberia. No matter what happens, she's not going to go hungry. She and her top lieutenant. So do you not see how some success in this fight against corruption, the way we are doing it through the international community, could harm Liberia?
No, I don't see it as harming Liberia. While I understand that perspective and that view, I don't see it as harming Liberia. And this is what I mean. Let's assume that we all have children. If you have a child that is sick and you know that a medication is good for the child long term, even if that medication would be bitter to the child, even if that medication would make the child cry initially or suffer or even throw up, I don't think any of us with foresight and vision as parents would say, well, I can see how this would be bad because on a temporary basis, it'll be uncomfortable for the child. The medicine would be bitter for the child. Therefore, let me just allow this child to go on with this disease, with this ailment. That's how I look at it. Is there going to be some temporary setback to remove this government and get Liberia forward? Yes, but every nation that has prospered, every nation that has gone forth, they've had moments where they've tried to clean up, and cleaning up is always tough, but I believe like every other country, we too are a people who are blessed by God. We too are people who are talented, and so we're able to rise above and prosper. So, no, I don't see it as a setback. I see it as a good thing in as much as any parent would see medicine for their ill child as a good thing, even if there's some temporary discomfort.
Okay, thank you. 9103, 9103. Your name, where you calling from, and your question for George Johnson. 9103.
Sia Willie, Washington, D.C. Judge Johnson, I'm not a fan of the EJS administration, but since she's been in power, 6 years, 7 years, I have not heard or read about surreptitious killings linked to her administration. That's one thing I can say. We had that with Taylor, we had that with Doe, and everyone else. So why did you and your girlfriend not expose the corruption at the onset of the corruption prior to being accused? And then I understand that the recordings have been done, but how are your recordings to be seen? Why should they be seen as an effective platform to expose corruption in Liberia when, if Ellen and you had these positions for 5, 6, 7 months, allow it to continue without exposing it, and then all of a sudden you're accused, and then for some reason I find the act to be somewhat duplicitous. You're friends of people, and they're sharing their confidences with you both, and then they're being recorded, and then they're coaxed into saying certain things while you all remain quiet. I just want clarity on such issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it is refreshing to hear a sister's voice. My sister, obviously, you're not informed fully on what has been happening. We did not get accused. We did not get indicted before we started to speak up. We started playing these recordings in January of 2013 in Liberia. And so since we're now in February of 2014, that would make it a year and a month ago. The indictment, the accusation came about in May of 2013. So 6 months after we started exposing these things, started playing these recordings, is when the accusation came about. Additionally, we were still working in Liberia, operating in Liberia when we started to expose the corruption. We had not been there, I think you said 5, 6, 7 months or something like that. We had not been there that long. The entire ordeal occurred from late October till January, the end of January. So you're talking, 3 months, 4 months, something thereabouts. This is when everything happened. It wasn't a 7-month period and so forth. When you talk about friends, and I think you said we're coaxing people into saying things, none of these people, I don't know where you're getting this from. I think that's an interesting theory that you're coming up with, but all the people, including the president whose voice you've heard, none of them have come up and said, oh, they tricked me into saying this, or they put a gun to my head, or they pay me. In fact, the police director says, I don't regret what I said, so I don't know where you're getting your theory from, but nevertheless, it's good to hear a sister's voice and to hear that all Liberians, men and women, are interested in the issue.
All right, thank you. Folks, let me take this time to welcome so many of you who have joined us since we started the show earlier today, about an hour already. Interesting. Time is moving fast. I want to welcome you all to the Liberian Diaspora Forum Weekly Talk Show. Many of you, I recognize the numbers from the fresh show we had earlier today, so let me say welcome. Let me welcome you back. With us now is just Judge Melvin Johnson. Many of you know, associated with the airport saga, corruption, exposure, and the rest of it. So if you have any question, comment, or concern, all you got to do is to dial *61 on your phone, and we will take your question over to the judge. Let's hear from 2929. Your name, where you calling from, your question for Judge Johnson. 2929.
All right, my name is Gabriel Nimley. I'm in Ohio. Can you hear me?
Yep, Mr. Nimley, I can hear you. Yep, you're on loud and clear.
This is Gabriel. And I want to thank the judge for what he's doing in Liberia. I want you to know, my brother, that the president, the so-called president of Liberia, is going to place people in these teleconferences to discredit you. But I know you'll fight a good fight. This is what I want to say about this corruption issue, and anyone can differ with me. I don't question the honesty of the judge. I think he's a good brother. The thing about this corruption thing is that when we are outside, we criticize any government. But when we are inside, we do the same old, same old. I always say that when I used to commentate games at the Anthony Tubman Stadium, from the minute the game starts to the end of the game, everyone around the pitch is a coach. Santos Maria, why you didn't send the ball to Papa Camara, you would have beaten Sekou Gomez. But take that same person from in the stadium at halftime, put a jersey on him, and that which he saw from outside, he sees no more. I know some of you may remember a Bishop Benny Warner, who used to be one of the greatest critics of Mr. Talbot, the late Talbot, peace be to his soul, who saw everything wrong with Talbot. And yet, when Green died, the vice president from my county, Sino, Talbot made him vice president. That which he saw from outside, he saw it no more. So I'm not questioning at all our brother Johnson. I think he's sincere. But that's the problem with our corruption. When we get there, we do the same old, same old. When I serve at the ministry, people said, oh, you know, you have to do this because the society looks at us. That does not in any way support what is going on in Liberia. It is ridiculous. It's shameful. And my brother, I may differ with some of the things you do, but I support you. And history will support you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Gabriel Nimler. Judge Johnson, do you care to add to that? He brought up an interesting point, though, just before you respond to. So the way he put it, one can infer that. So right now, you are seeing all of the things that are wrong, you know, with the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf government in terms of corruption. Could we interpret Brother Nimler's remark to mean that when you and Ellen were in the government, you were not seeing some of the things that you're seeing now that you're outside government? That's one way of looking at it, isn't it?
Well, no. I mean, I understand what he's saying, and I appreciate, you know, what he's saying, but that does not apply to us. Again, for the fourth time, while we were in Liberia, while we were working, we had a press conference. This is unprecedented in Liberia. The friends and associates we had in government thought that we were crazy, where people working for and with the government would have a press conference to expose corruption in the government while they're in Liberia working. This is what we did. So we did not leave and come to America and in the comforts of America begin to expose. We started doing this while we were in Liberia. We started identifying these government officials. We started playing their corrupt recordings. there in Liberia to bring about exposure, because we were, and by God's grace will continue to be serious about this. The thing at the gas station that I mentioned, the thing at the VIP lounge, the Goals employee, those are not things that we started doing after we left. Those are things we did while we were there, including the press conference, very similar to what we're doing now. We play the recordings. We took numerous questions from the journalists there on the ground, the print media, radio, TV. We took numerous questions right there in Liberia. So this is not, again, a situation where we're out of government before we speak. We started speaking while we were in government, and then our lives were threatened. The police director revealed to us what was going on. The defense minister revealed what was going on. And of course, as I said, we had to exercise wisdom for our lives.
Okay. All right. 8972, 8972. Your name, where you calling from, your question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson. 8972.
Yeah. Yes. Hello?
Yeah, could you please tell us your name, where you calling from?
It's Trophy Charlie here.
Okay.
All right. I just want to thank the judge for the good work he's doing. But here's my question. It's not really a question, but I just wanted to understand how the judge will respond to this situation, because I'm a little confused with the president's action. I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, the president has gone to the Thai shop on Kiri Street, and she made an assertion. She said that because there was a question that, certain people in the government, that the president has been protecting them. The president said that she has not been protecting people in the government, but rather those people who are doing good on their jobs are trying to straighten up the agency or entity. People have been trying to get at them and making noise behind them and trying to get rid of them from the work. And so it was not because, the people were not performing. So then it raises a question. So I don't know how the judge will respond, because then how is it the case that at the airport, I would think that given what the president has said, somebody is working at the airport who was doing something that's the same reason why other people were against them. So I'm a little confused. So why is it the president is saying that those who are working, other people are against them, they want to remove them from the job because they were doing the right thing, trying to fight corruption or give transparency. And I see the situation at the airport, the same issue arises, and those who are at the top of the airport, the managing director, is removed. So I'm just a little confused. I don't know how you can help me out here.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if I hope the judge understood the question. Judge Johnson, you got it?
Yeah, I think I understand the question.
Okay.
Thank you, Brother Cubby. I'm with you. I am similarly perplexed. We have a president that Musa Bilate was charged. He was duly served. Musa Bilate has been a convicted felon in Liberia already, and she comes out and pledges confidence in him. Of course, the president hired the justice minister, and the president has the ability to fire the justice minister. And so when the person that puts you in a position that has the power to remove you from the position, and you seemingly go to prosecute a third party, and that person pledges and expresses confidence in that third party, it puts you in a position of limbo. I'm confused as well as to how that happened. One of the other recordings that will come out very shortly, you will hear from the secretary there at the airport, the secretary for the airport board of directors, crying on the recording as to how these government officials threatened her so that she could falsify some minutes from the board of director meetings to reflect some negative things against Ellen Corcoran and myself. You will hear her on the recording naming the people and how they threatened her and so forth. I think you heard the threats that the chief of airport security, Mr. Nick Zuba, had received when he expressed that to Director Chris Massaquire, Director of Police Chris Massaquire. Chris Massaquire asked him whether the people had threatened him. I think you heard that as well. And so these are not things that Judge Johnson and Ellen Corcoran are saying or allegations we're making, these are things by God's grace and wisdom that are on recordings. And so I'm with you. It perplexes me as well how the president in good faith can come out and say these things. I don't know. I mean, additionally, we've heard on the recording, the NACO recording, where there's this company that's receiving hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of the Liberian people money out of the airport budget. But while we were there at the airport, we never met anybody. We never saw any work they did. We never received any proposal. We approached the president on recording to inquire. You hear the president pretend like she doesn't know who this company is. Then she accuses others in government of being part of it. Then she said that the payments will be returned, the payments will be revoked. Of course, those payments were never returned. Those payments were never revoked. In fact, this is something that will come up very shortly. We've recently received another tip from some of the informants we have in government about a recent payment from about the same company, over $250,000, where they've now slightly changed the name of the company. We were contacting various investigators, forensic investigators, and we're working on that very soon. We'll bring the reports to the public. And so all of these things, the Mak Ambla payment with the CDC killing, for those of you who don't know, at least one person was killed. I saw the picture of the corpse. There are some reports that it was more than one person. But the person responsible for that killing, Mark Ambla, was the then police director. The president supposedly fired him for failing to provide security and airing and resulting in the death of the sedition. But then he received $150,000 from the airport budget, where he never submitted any statement of work. Nobody ever saw him at the airport. The government now says that it was so top secret, the work that Mark Ambla was doing at the airport. It was so top secret that nobody saw him. It was so top secret that the managing director of the airport was not informed. It was so top secret that the board of director at the airport was not informed. It was so top secret that the legal advisor for the airport was not informed, but only the finance minister, the minister of state, and the minister of transport. These are the three people that circulated letters between them and Mark Ambla. And then the finance minister went in and took the money from the airport without informing the airport officials and paid Mark Ambla. So I'm with you, Brother Chubby, with all these things, and I can go on and on and on. I'm confused how the president can even come out and say these things to our people unless she just views us as fools.
Interesting. All right, 2318. Your name, where you calling from, your question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson. 2318.
This is Alexander Walker. I'm calling from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I would just like to touch on something real quick before I ask my question. I know some people are saying that they worry about Liberia losing international aid and stuff because of the exposure of what's going on. The Honorable Judge and Madam Cagro they are one of those who exposed Liberia. I think most of you know about the Canadian guy who wrote Corruption 101. That's another group. Corruption in Liberia, the international community are aware of what's going on. So there's no need to worry because all our major donors have their own people on the ground doing work. For example, the German guy GTZ and another German organization. The Japanese got a Japanese Technical Corporation team on the ground. America got USAID on the ground. All these people got the people on the ground. So they should not worry about Liberia losing aid. The aid will still go because the people on the ground will make sure it's used for the purpose intended. So nobody should worry here about what's going on. I think what is going on is good, and I think every Liberian needs to sit down and open their eyes and realize that our country is heading in the wrong direction. And to the Honorable Judge, for me personally, I got no doubt in Madam Cagro, being someone who wear the uniform myself, knowing her accomplishment. I know that she wouldn't have gotten there if she had any tint
in her character. I know that for sure. All I will advise you is that because most of the things you hear people saying, well, the reason why we don't want dual citizenship, everything they try to hide behind. That's why we're afraid we don't want dual citizenship because people will do this and go to America and hide and what have you. I understand that. It affects me myself. But don't let nobody fool you to go sit down in Liberia and think you're going to get some trial over there. They got a lot of crazy people, a lot of ex-combatants, a lot of hired killers that are capable of getting even with you, and the government will act like they don't know what's going on. If it ever reached a point where the government of Liberia can tell the Liberian people the truth and request a case or open a case, they can always have a case trial in America on American soil. And I'm sure the Americans will be willing to provide that facility and middleman position. And if you are found guilty, I don't think America will hesitate. But as a Liberian to another Liberian, and I would not recommend you listening to what Liberian people say, oh, you go on the ground to prove. You got nothing to prove. All you got to prove is what you're doing right now. You that don't want to believe it, it's up to you. But I don't recommend, I would not advise that you guys go on the soil to go through any real trial. Trust me, it would be very, very risky. And I wish you a blessing. Thanks.
Thank you. That's one view. That's one way of looking at it. Liberia can set the precedent of trying her cases or in the diaspora. What do you say to that, Judge Johnson?
Well, Liberia can do that, but the reality is this is all a smokescreen. This is all a hoax. We are essentially being accused of setting up a fake Senegalese company, and taking money and saying that the company existed, saying the company did work, and fleeing with the money. We have assembled nearly 300 pages of contracts, bank statements, bank drafts, bank slips, emails, letters, statement of work, different correspondences, emails between people, engineers of Diaspora Consulting, conversing with the airport technical staff when 4 engineers from Diaspora Consulting were there working. These people came to Liberia on 3 different occasions. There's correspondences between them and Public Works. There's correspondences between them and the Ministry of Transport, and on and on and on. Clearly, Liberia is not coming to the U.S. or going to any court of any level of integrity and saying that these people made up a fake company when all this evidence is right there in black and white. This is the reason we've always contended from the very beginning that there's not ever going to be a trial. There's not ever going to be any extradition because it clearly makes absolutely no sense. My brother, your point is well taken. I'm not going under any pretense of going to do any trial because it's clear, not only with the dossier that we've assembled, but the sitting judge on the case, Blamo Dixon, had a statement in the press, a press conference, I believe, where he said that he went off on the government as not presenting any evidence to him. So not only are we presenting these recordings that are spelling out what's going on, not only have we contended now for 9 months that there's no evidence that this is false, but the judge who's on the case in Liberia challenges the government to bring forth evidence as well. So clearly with all of these things, my brother, you're right. We will exercise wisdom and we will continue to struggle with the limitations that we have now.
All right. Thank you, Judge Johnson. Let's take one from 5756, 5756. Your name, where you calling from, and your question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson. 5756.
This is Emmanuel Beatty from the state of North Carolina. And we wanted to thank Judge Johnson for the work that they have done so far. Just one quick question and clarification as far as Diaspora Consulting. I want to know whether is this a company registered in Liberia, and what job was Diaspora Consulting doing at RIA, and what is Judge Johnson's own relationship with that company?
Yeah, my brother from North Carolina, I had, and I guess in the foreseeable future, I will have no relationship with Diaspora Consulting. I met these people for the first time and the only time when their engineers came to Liberia. The principal of Diaspora Consulting was brought to Liberia by the finance minister, Amara Kone, when he worked at planning. The finance minister, Amara Kone, was a classmate of the principal of Diaspora Consulting. Diaspora Consulting comes out of Senegal. I believe that they're registered or incorporated in the state of Delaware. The way Diaspora Consulting got involved is that obviously Liberia has many issues. We had problems at the airport. We needed some technical expertise. And of all the Francophone countries on the continent of Africa, Senegal is the aviation headquarters for all of them. They handle all the air traffic controls and all the technical aspects for aviation for all the Francophone countries in Africa. As you can imagine, Senegal, that gives them tremendous leverage and expertise in the area of aviation. One of the engineers that I met for the first and only time, I believe his name was a Mr. Cisse, he had headed Senegal's entire aviation industry for 20 years. And he had just retired, and he had agreed to come to assist Liberia with some of the problems that we were having. And so to give you an idea, the level of expertise that these people brought to Liberia, the contract that they signed, to date, they have not even received the money for the work that they were paid. Essentially, what happened when the president discovered that we had recorded her and these government officials, and as I said, we did the first press conference in Liberia. The plan was to get us captured and perhaps to kill us to keep this thing under wrap. But when that was unsuccessful, then they scrambled and went to plan B to tarnish us, to preempt anything that we might do. And I guess coming up with the theory that we made up this fake company was the best they could do, but they underestimated that they were dealing with professionals that kept documentation. Clearly, as you know, in America, when you work at a certain level and you really earn the opportunity to work at that level, that comes with a particular level of expertise. And so we documented everything. We backed up everything. Hence, we were able to assemble nearly 300 pages, as I said, of proof. And the 300 pages, honestly, is not even necessary. You just need to look at one or two of the emails, and you will see that it's not a fake company. I believe the last part of the brother question had to deal with what was Diaspora Consulting doing in Liberia. Liberia's airport is deformed, is deplorable, to say the least, my brother. We had potholes at the airport. I don't know if you follow one of the stories, but Air France flew to Liberia, international commercial jet. Their wheels got stuck in one of the potholes, if you can imagine, in the mud at the airport. They had to unload all the passengers, find places for them to spend the night, embarrassingly, in Liberia. And another jet had to bring in parts for them to make the repairs for the aircraft to leave out of Liberia the next day. And so that's the kind of condition of the airport that we were dealing with. Senegal, as I mentioned, has tremendous expertise. In order to start the runway work that a Lebanese company had already contracted for by the name of SSF, in order for that company to do the work to a level that would have given us comfort for the flying public safety, we wanted somebody to come in and oversee the work, to do soil testing, soil samples, asphalt testing, because the kind of asphalt you would use for vehicular roads you would not use for aircrafts. Obviously, they're bigger, they're heavier. We didn't have the expertise to test the asphalt to make sure that it met the proper chemical compounds and so forth. And again, Senegal is the headquarters for all the Francophone countries, and so they had the expertise, and hence that's how Diaspora Consulting got in the picture.
All right. Thanks again, Josh Johnson. Let's take one from Mohammed Dollar in Minnesota. Mr. Dollar, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. My question to you is that what do you really want to, what is your intention or the primary objective of those recordings? What do you really want to achieve at the end of the day? Thank you.
I thought I asked that question earlier. All right. Ms. Johnson?
Yeah, I want Liberian babies that are unborn, that are newly born, that are dying from these diseases that are easily curable and preventable. I want them to stop dying. I want the 90% of all of our people, our blood, our families, I should say, that are living below poverty. I want that to cease. I want us to have roads. I want us to have hospitals. I want us to have electricity. I want us to have running water. And the consequence of corruption is the absence of those things. And so those are the things that I envision that I want for Liberia. I want us to have a dignified airport. I want us, those that are in the diaspora, to be able to go back to a country and take our colleagues from around the world and be proud and hold our head up high as men and say, yeah, this is where I'm from. I don't want us any longer to be embarrassed. And so those are the things that I want. But in order to get those things, we have to shut down corruption. I believe we have to shut down this government and this corrupt president in order to move in that direction, because clearly I am totally convinced that with the existence and continuation of this president and this government, we will not any time in the near future achieve those things.
All right. Speaking of ending corruption and change of government, that as you know, you're not alone in that call, making that call anymore. I believe too many Liberians are calling just for that. Of course, some of us get worried a little bit when, as far as to what that does to our democracy. Why can't they just wait to 2017? But when it comes to the issue of change, Judge Johnson, I think the easiest part of change is, wanting change. Now, the hardest part, perhaps the most difficult part, is what the change will produce. How can we be sure of what comes after Ellen Johnson leaves? So I guess my question is, assuming Ellen steps down today, who in your widest imagination of Liberian politics can step in to do a better job? Which Liberian politician you think will be less corrupt than what we have now? Because corruption seems to be embedded in the Liberian society. So Ellen is gone today. She out. Who do you think will come and do a different or better job?
My brother, I haven't even gone that far. That has not been part of my job. That has not been part of my focus. Honestly, I've not even considered it. But I will say this to your point. I think it's with all due respect, I think that point and that sentiment, if people who hold such point, I think it's kind of selfish. The reason I think it's selfish, it is so easy when you're not that baby that's suffering from that disease that's curable, that's preventable, and you're on the verge of dying. It is so easy to say, well, let's just let the situation ride out. It is so easy when you're not the one that you're part of that 90% that's living below poverty, that your collarbone is reflective. It's so easy to say, well, we need to first think about, who will be the next politician before, and, let's let this thing die out. It's so easy. We're here in America. We have hospitals. We have roads. We have electricity. We have water. Our children are in schools. There's shelter. We don't have to take cardboard boxes from which we buy electronics here to use as roofs for our houses. So, yeah, it's so easy to say, well, let's just let it ride out. But I assure you, and I assure anybody with such sentiment, if you're in that position, an additional day with such a corrupt president and government is an additional day too long. But I don't have any affiliation with any politician. I have not talked to any of them. I've not examined them. That has not been my focus. So, yeah, that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, I know. But, today we have all of the things you mentioned here in America, but it was just in the 80s when I was growing up in Liberia. We didn't have any of the things that we have here. And in no time, we got robbed out of our childhood with people coming, dancing around talking about change. And soon we saw the 1990 revolution. Change did come. What kind of change it was? Charles Sucking, was that better than Doe? That depends who you ask. And then in no time, Chancellor is gone. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is there. Is she better? Obviously, that's not what we're discussing here. So I guess where I'm heading, it's easier to say we did change. But I think the hardest part is, how do we get the change we want? I mean, should we qualify the kind of change we want? Given the nature of our politicians, one just said today, all along, everything he's done, he was told to keep quiet, and he did so, cooperatively, until at this time now he's decided to break silence. So I think it's just fair to say that sometimes it's a good thing to be a little careful as to what we wish for. We all want change, a better change for Liberia. That's the point I was alluding to.
No, I agree. I agree with your point, my brother, and I understand your point. What I think we all should do is we all should grow some gumption and sort of mimic sort of what we're doing now. Everybody in every sector of society should stand up for the greater good of the country. And I think if all of us have enough intestinal fortitude to do that, I don't think it would matter much which politician is put in there, because democracy is supposed to be a government of the people and by the people. But a people that lack gumption, that lack intestinal fortitude, essentially lack democracy. And so until we as a people can man up and woman up and say, you know what, these politicians, the president, they work for us, until we can take that attitude, then, yeah, we would be fearful of which politician go in and go out of the country, because instead of us dictating to them how we want them to represent us, they're now becoming dictators of us. So, yeah, your point is well made.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's hear from 1040, 1040, 1040, your name, where you calling from, your question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson. 1040. Hello? 1040, are you there? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you please tell us your name, where you calling from, your question, comment, or concern for the judge?
My name is Sekou Kruma, calling from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Okay. What's your question, comment, or concern?
Well, there are two things. First and foremost, I would like to thank you, Kafumba Kruma, for being in the forefront for enlightening our people. Now, secondly, I would like to thank Judge Johnson for the manner in which he has been conducting this fight. There are two things that one got to realize. People were asking him that when he was in government, why they did not see anything. Personally, I was working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for years, and I attended every peace conference of Liberia. And as a career foreign service officer, there were things that I saw that I could not write publicly about, but I had to call the government attention to those things in memorandum for eyes only. And I wrote several of those memoranda. The passport scandal that is still obtaining in our foreign ministry today, because of the work I had done with it, Minister Sirleaf, after reviewing the files, set up an intergovernmental task force and made me
co-chairman of that task force. To cut a long story short, because of some of the work I've done personal matters, a certain foreign minister tried to terminate my services, except that she herself was terminated by Mr. Taylor just at one of the peace conferences in Abuja, literally. So while you are in government, you see things, you observe things, you write confidential memoranda to your bosses. You can put them in the press. I mean, that would be a serious breach of confidence. So that's my observation about that. Now, my question to Judge Johnson is, with the totality of all the corruption rumors about this government, some of them proven, all the reports, nothing done about it, and some of the most scandalous things that we have heard, isn't there a way that impeachment proceedings can be brought against Mrs. Sirleaf? And if at all, with reference to the line of succession, we have a vice president. There is no history in Liberia that a vice president succeeded to the presidency and mimic what the president was doing. When Willie Tower became president after 19 years as vice president under Mr. Tubman, he took the country forward. So I think Buckeye is the appropriate line of succession. So the question of who succeeds Mr. Sirleaf has been settled by the Liberian Constitution, which is in force as far as I know. So, Judge Johnson, what are some of the things you believe can be used to bring impeachment proceedings against this government in the House of Legislature? And what will you suggest that we as concerned and patriotic Liberians can do to galvanize support in the House of Legislature for them to begin such a proceeding?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Krumah. Your point is well digested. We've released recordings on the chairman of the board for the airport linking the president. We've released direct recording on the president with her own voice. We've released recording on the Minister of State for Presidential Affairs. We've released recording on the Deputy Minister of State for Presidential Affairs. We've released recording on the Minister of Defense. We've released recording on the Director of Police. We've now released recording on a senior senator. In any civilized society where the people have some gumption, some intestinal fortitude, any one of those recordings would be sufficient ground for some kind of an independent probe, some kind of an independent investigation. So I think clearly with all the recordings we've released, we've made public the documents showing how Mark Ambla was paid essentially for the CDC. I think when you take all those things in totality, that it should be more than sufficient to begin an impeachment proceeding against this president. How do we go about it? Obviously, the Constitution, the law of the land, reserves that power for the legislature. I think all of us should and can begin to contact the legislatures in drove and allow them to understand that this is what we want to happen. I think all of us can contact our family and friends in Liberia and tell them to also contact these legislatures as well. There's a website that is available that has their public contact information, email, and phone numbers. I think if all of us begin to do something instead of talk about the problem, I think perhaps we can get somewhere. Again, my vision is to see Liberians move from a place of being the recipients of dictatorships as opposed to the recipients of a democratic society. In a democracy, the government is supposed to be of and by the people. The representatives, the president, and government officials are supposed to be working for the people. And that's the attitude we should have, that we are the boss. They're there to serve us. And so we need to be more aggressive and move this thing forward. Another point, Brother Kroman, that you touched on that I respectfully disagree with, you mentioned about breach of trust and breach of confidence and so forth. When you work for or with the government, you're not working for another government official. You're working for the people. And so by exposing government officials, yeah, you might be breaching their trust and their confidence, but you're not there for their trust and their confidence. You're not there working for the president's trust or the president's confidence. You're there working for the people. And so the people do not feel that by exposing other government officials, you're breaching the people's trust or the people's confidence. And so I just wanted to touch on that. I think that's a flawed way of looking at it. That view I've heard expressed that, you've breached the president's trust and the president's confidence, as if that is supposed to matter. In a democracy, the only trust and confidence we should be concerned with is that of the people.
All right. Let's hear back from Sia in DC. Sia, welcome back to the show. Oh, I got a wrong number. Sorry, that's not Sia. Sia, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Kafumba. My question, Judge, is that you didn't answer the first part of my question, which was up until this point, I have not heard any sort of report or read any sort of report or article that says that the president has, attempted to kill someone or to kidnap. I mean, she's done a lot of nefarious things, business-wise and so forth. I'm not a fan. I'm not in her camp. But I just want to play fair. And I think to level the playing field, why do you think that at this point your life is endangered by going back to Liberia if you were to be extradited back to Liberia to be asked to stand trial for whatever the accusations are? But I just keep hearing that, I was told that they're going to kill us and we should leave and we should do this and we should do that. But at the same time, others have done worse. They have stolen more money in Liberia and they haven't been brought to justice. Are you saying that we know that selective justice has been the case and the platforms that are existing now are to silence people, but I haven't heard anyone being killed. So I really kind of find it strange. Then secondly, I want to ask, are you saying that Diaspora, the company, is out of Senegal and they monitor all the aviation programs in Francophone Africa? Because I am aware that Asigna is the company that deals with all the aviation in West Africa. Well, actually throughout Francophone Africa for this, and they're based in Dakar. So please clarify.
Thank you.
Yeah, my sister, I'm glad that as a woman, you're the one that's asking this question and raising the concern about our safety. You have Liberia ranked, I believe, number 1 for corruption worldwide. You have a situation where we were told by various government officials that they were plotting against us. You have a recording that we've made public now where the Minister of Defense, this is not an ordinary citizen or even just another government official, but the Minister of Defense, the Secretary of Defense for the entire nation, tells you that he has investigated that they're plotting against you. He mentioned them wanting to sign your death warrant. These are not words that we put in his mouth. These are not things that we pay him or threaten him to say. Further, you have the Chief of Airport Security, Mr. Juba, mentioned how he was threatened to compromise our safety. You hear him mention how the office was broken into, it was vandalized. Then you hear the Director of Police saying point blank that the President told him, including the Immigration Chief, the person responsible for protecting our borders, that if you don't capture these people, you allow these people to leave, you will be fired. And subsequently, she lost that position. And the Director of Police, you hear him say, your life is in danger with this president, and basically, let me help you to get out of this country and go for safety. My sister, with all of those things combined, if you don't see that as a threat to one's life and one's safety, especially a woman potentially, in the case of Ellen Corcoran, being raped and abused, If you don't see that, then I don't know what will help you see it. The second point regarding Diaspora Consulting, no, Diaspora Consulting is an individual company. I never said that Diaspora Consulting runs aviation for all the Francophone countries. I said Senegal is the headquarters of aviation activities for all the Francophone countries. Hence, Senegal has a particular expertise in that area. And Diaspora Consulting, the engineers of Diaspora Consulting are from Senegal. One of the engineers of Diaspora Consulting ran the entire Senegalese aviation industry, if you will, for 20 years. And he retired and he joined Diaspora Consulting. So that's what I had said previously.
Thank you for the clarification. To those of you who just joined us, as usual, I want to welcome you to the Liberian Diaspora Forum Weekly Talk Show. We are pressing on 2 hours into the show. So we have Judge Melvin Johnson on talking about corruption in Liberia. And we invite you to dial *61 as usual. If you have any question, comment, or concern, dial *61 on your phone. Let's hear from 0357, 0357. Your name, where you calling from, your question, comment, or concern for the judge. 0357.
Yeah, my name is Sekou Karen, calling from Richmond, Virginia. To thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and I want to say thank you to Judge Johnson for coming again on the show. Judge Johnson, I heard you talk about Liberia being, quote unquote, the most corrupt country in the world. I think every Liberian, including the diaspora Liberians, know exactly about the corruption. We all heard about corruption every day, and including the electrics in Liberia, people who elect our people every now and then, even though they know they are corrupt. But yet, the question here is that I heard you talk about we have to shut down these days the corruption or shut down this president in the government. I want to first of all know, how do you go about shutting down this corruption, and how do you go about shutting down this government, and also what is the prospect of you achieving that goal? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Well, the way we go about bringing change in Liberia is changing our attitude, developing more gumption, developing more intestinal fortitudes, exercising our rights as individuals in a democracy, our rights meaning that these government officials, including the president, that they work for us instead of the other way around. I think first when we change that attitude that we've had for long-standing, as you mentioned, this is something we all say, we all know about corruption, blase, blase, and it's just sort of a laissez-faire attitude, and it's nothing. Again, some of us are more privileged than others. I was privileged to go through JFK numerous times while I was in Liberia to, on a first-hand basis, see the sick children, see the sick elders, see the sick people, talk to them, hold their hands, go through Catholic hospital and so forth. And for me, corruption, the consequences, it's no longer an everyday matter-of-fact, blah, blah, blah thing. It's very serious. These are real lives. These are real people who are suffering from it. And so the way we go about making a change, eventually removing this president and eventually removing any president for that matter, and any government official that shows that they're unfit to be there, is we first change our minds and our attitudes and develop more intestinal fortitude.
So the question of how sure are you to accomplish that?
I'm very confident that we can accomplish it. While again we appreciate and applaud what our brothers and sisters in Ghana are doing, I submit to you all and to our brothers and sisters in Ghana that they're no better than we. They also developed intestinal fortitudes. They had leaders step up to the plate, man up, as I said, woman up, and decided enough is enough. And then the rest of the populace began to follow. And today, Ghana is boasting as indeed the black star of Africa, one of the shining stars of Africa. We applaud them. We celebrate them. But in as much as they are able to do it, I believe we as Liberians are able to do it, and I dare say do it better.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. 7786, your name, where you calling from, your question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson. 7786.
My name is Barry Wayne. I'm the producer of the Liberian African Youth Service here in Washington, D.C. I know Melvin personally. I want to commend him for coming on this program. And the problems in Liberia, as we know it, I don't think elections in 2017 will be the solution, because Ellen will not knowingly let anybody that will go after her after she leaves office to win any election. That election commission is in their pocket. They control it, and they will put in place whoever they want. So we're not going to wait for election in 2017. There are forces that are working. We're going to get these people out of the place there and hold them accountable for the corruption and the massive giveaway of our resources that they perpetrate over there. I want to thank Melvin for his courage, and Sister Cochran for their courage in going to Liberia and recording the president and other corrupt government officials. These tapes will be used against these people in a court of law. We will prosecute these people here. We will hold them accountable. And that is we want to commend them very much for what they've done. Keep holding on to those tapes there. There will come a day that these people will be held accountable in a court of law in Liberia. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being on the show. Judge Johnson, do you care to add or just go on?
No, I think we can go on. I totally agree with Mr. William and his view. That's the kind of intestinal fortitude that I was talking about that we all should develop to move forward. We can copy, we can mimic Ghana, and we can be as successful, as I dare say, even more successful than what they have displayed.
Okay. Well, next we'll take Rondon Jawate from New York. Welcome to the show. Your question, comment, or concern for the judge.
Judge, let me admit to you that I'm not a supporter of President Salif, and I have never been. But you scare me the most. It is very, very scary that you are making comments here to excite and the population for a change, and you are not even ready for a change. There have been several questions here asking you, how do we go about this change? And another person even stated that, wait a minute, we'll do it using the vice president, we'll go through the vice president. And we have coming up an election coming up for the Senate, midterm election. You have not even tried to make a change in that direction, where I think the legislature body is a key in deciding where this change goes. And we have an opportunity now to make a change in the Senate. To make a change, go to your country, where you're from, and started talking about the failure of the Senate in addressing the issue of corruption in the country. You are not saying that. And two, I'm even afraid that legally, in your court in U.S., where you are a judge, you will not be accepting a recording, a falsely recorded, not falsely, but recorded that was recorded unknown to other people, to accept that. You are trying to gain public opinion on this thing. And I think that has been done. Now, try to see if you can propose some tangible process by which we can do that change. Like my brother from Washington, D.C., which I have known over years, I know what he wants. He wants an immediate change right away. How? You put people on the street to get Helen out? We have done that. We have done this and that. And they have not gotten her anywhere. Even the slaves got on the street, went to jail. You ran away. And we're going to have so many people running away. But we are not addressing the issues. Let's educate those that are there to take people out legally. The legislature term is coming up now. Now I want to see you make a change in your country. And let's go after them. Helen is just a small percentage of this whole process. The young man that just spoke right now, he knows my position. As far as it concerns Mrs. Salib, I did not vote for her. I did not support her. But we need to do it because we did not do it the right way in the beginning. That's why this thing continues to haunt us. So I'm advising you, stop the recording or use the recording and galvanize the people in your country, in your district, so that we can get the legislature straightened up first. After that, then we can go with the impeachment proceeding. Then it can be done legally. All
Hold on here. Judge Johnson? I must have muted her.
Yeah, I'm still here. The brother got cut off, or I didn't hear the rest of it.
No, he didn't get cut off. I stopped him. And then I had myself muted because I had background noise. I didn't want that interfering, so then I forgot to unmute myself. But yeah, I think he exhausted his point. So my question is, do you have anything to say to his concern? If not, then we'll keep taking questions.
Yeah, they talked for so long, I sort of got lost as to what his point was. But I caught some glimpses of it. He was saying I should go to the county and deal with the legislatures first, and then go and seek impeachment from the president. So basically, he's got a predetermined order of how he thinks that I should operate. You know, while everybody's entitled to an opinion, I will do what I feel God has led me to do. That's my assignment. I will stay in my lane. I will serve my purpose to the fullest. I urge him, since that's a plan of action that he has, let him begin that process in dealing with the legislature instead of trying to tell me what I should do. You know, I'm a Liberian just like he is. I am no different than he is. My nibble string is in Liberia just like his is. So step up to the plate, man up. The plan you have sounds like a good plan. Man up and start executing that plan. Start getting people to execute the plan. Enough talking. Let's take some action.
All right. Okay. 5741, 5741. Your name, where you calling from, your question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson. 5741.
Yeah, Mr. Kafumba, thank you so much. This is Country Boy here again. Judge Johnson, how are you today?
By God's grace, my brother, I'm well. How you doing?
I'm doing very, very good. I first of all, I'm gonna recommend you for you being consistent since you've been on the show from day one. You've been stick on your position, and which is very how do you call it? Which makes sense. But my question to you: you have not given us a position where you're gonna be in 2017.
And this is why Harry Grace did our country, and then what our country is in this kind of mess today. The corruption is at 101, like people say, because he's been silent from the day he's been in our country up to now. Are you going to take that same path, having Grace Day to be quiet but not taking position? You have to explain to all. You got to lay out your target statement. Where you gonna how you gonna lead us? Because we cannot join your movement if you cannot outline your layers. How are we gonna go? So we need what would be your strategy plan towards removing this government? It's two ways. It's either we use it the legal way or the illegal way. Which way are you gonna take?
All right, thank you.
My brother, this is not my movement. This is not Ellen Corcoran's movement. This is the Liberian people's movement. This is your movement. This is Brother Kafumba's movement. This is all the listening audience movement, the people in Liberia in the diaspora. And so I think it's important that we get that straight, first of all. Secondly, I have an assignment that I intend to fulfill. As of now, that assignment is not about 2017 and putting forth a political platform and a mission statement and all that kind of stuff. Right now, the assignment started in Liberia, exposing corruption for the benefit of all Liberians, and I continue to be on that assignment. This is what I believe God has me doing at this point. But I don't personally have a movement. Me and Ellie Corcoran combined don't have a movement. This is for the benefit of all Liberians, especially, as I mentioned, those babies that are dying, those people that are sick, our people who are living below poverty, our people who go without electricity, without water, without schools, without roads, medicine, hospitals, etc. That's who the movement is about. It's about all of us. It's about everybody, not me or Ellen Corcoran.
Okay. Let's hear from Winnipeg, Canada. Let's hear from Mr. Duclay in Winnipeg, Canada. Welcome to the show. Your question, comment, or concern?
Yeah, Kafuma, thank you very much. And I want to say hello and thank you to George Johnson for availing himself to us again this evening to continue on the dialogue we started some time ago. I've been listening to George Johnson, and I must say I also had the opportunity to read part of the documents he had sent to Kafuma, and I went through those documents, and I also listened to the latest recording that was released sometime last week, and I went through it very carefully, and I must say now, knowing what has transpired and listening to George Johnson, I'm still trying to decipher the level of exposure that he has spoken about and he continued to speak about. And in doing so, it reminds me of when, George Johnson first appeared on the show. He did mention that he was going to Liberia, I think, long before he got involved with this airport thing. Having said that, he did not mention about anything regarding his involvement in fighting corruption until when he got involved with the airport through, working with the Corcoran. So for me, that make it sound very suspect in terms of his intention, as well as not being entirely convinced as to how those documents exonerate him in any way from the allegations. Having said all of that, this is my question to Judge Johnson. I know for a fact that it's not disputable that Judge Johnson is an American citizen. Ellen Cochran is also an American citizen. As a matter of fact, from the story as it was introduced, she was hired through some negotiation with the American Air Force. I don't know how true is that story, but the bottom line is she is an American citizen. My question to him is that with all the exposure that has been generated as a result of these tapes recordings and all of the publicity, intentional or unintentional, do you actually believe in your hearts as an American citizen going back to stand or going to court to Liberia, do you actually believe in your mind, with all the publicity this case has generated, even though, I must admit, the Ellen Johnson government, with all the things they are known for, they don't have any track record of, killing American citizens or any citizen for that matter. Do you actually believe, if you go back, you or Cochran, to stand trial as you've been accused, do you actually believe that with all the publicity generated, something might happen to you after all what has been generated?
Okay. All right.
Yes, my brother. I actually believe that. I don't know how long you've been out of Liberia. I don't know how closely you are tied in to the recent realities of what goes on in Liberia. But yeah, I actually believe that when the director of security at the airport tells you that, and he has no reason to lie on the government, when the defense minister tells you that he has no reason to lie on the government, when the police director tells you that, and other people tell you that, I think it behooves you to have some sense and some wisdom and believe that. The other point that you touched on is that I had been traveling to and fro Liberia. Why did I not get involved in anti-corruption until I started working for the airport and for the government? There's no way that if I'm running a private business, which I did for many years in Liberia, that I would have the kind of privilege and insight into corruption and the kinds of things that go on that affect our people. And so because I didn't have the insight, I wasn't aware as I later on became aware. Having said that, my brother, you raise a good point. If you would Google me, spend some time and Google my name on the Internet, you would see that this is not the first cause for the sake of Liberians that God has gotten me involved with. You will see that God has been using me for now over a decade, getting involved in the causes of Liberia. And if you get on the Internet, you would see that over a decade ago, some police here in Georgia murdered a Liberian, and for the cause of Liberians everywhere and our safety and our prosperity, God used me to fight against those police officers for years. As a consequence, I received death threats, as I mentioned before. God give us victory in that regard. If you research me further, and I'm not trying to give you my resume, but just to touch on a couple of things quickly, because the brother mentioned that I haven't been doing anything until this, recent situation. If you also research, my brother, a few years ago in the state of Oklahoma, a very wicked Caucasian family, that's not to say that Caucasian people are wicked, but this particular family was wicked and they were Caucasian. They went to Liberia. They adopted 5 of our precious Liberian daughters. I don't know these kids from anywhere. I don't know their families from anywhere. They adopted these children. A Liberian mother had given birth to 4 of these children while in labor with child number 5. She died, and the father was unable to care for these girls. He turned all 5 of these sisters over to an orphanage. This very wicked family from rural Oklahoma came to Liberia, adopted our 5 precious daughters, and took them to Oklahoma. The ages of these children when they were picked up were 4 months old to 12 years old. That's the age range of the 5 sisters. They started raping and torturing these children. I was sitting in my law office in Atlanta, Georgia, working. I received a phone call from one of the neighbors in rural Oklahoma. They had researched some of the works that I had been doing that God had used me to do for Liberians all over the country, and they called me and told me, which at the time seemed like a very bizarre story, about 5 Liberian girls being tortured and raped, abused, and so forth in Oklahoma, and the authorities there were doing nothing about it. That enraged me. I have 2 precious daughters of my own. As I've tried to do over the years, I will not stand by and see any of our people be subjected to any kind of foolishness. And so by God's grace, God gave me provisions. I was able to volunteer to go back and forth to Oklahoma, airfares, hotels. You can imagine the cost associated for nearly 2 years fighting the authorities there. I also flew to Washington, D.C., to get the then Ambassador Barnes. Nathaniel Barnes was the ambassador at the time, to get him involved. I also flew to Capitol Hill in D.C., met with U.S. senators, met with congressional people to bring to their attention the situation of our precious Liberian daughters. I met with the senators from the state of Oklahoma. We went forward with the trial of the case. We went all the way to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. That was the first time in Oklahoma jurisprudential history that such a case occurred. Long story short, by God's grace, those children today are free. All 4 of those family members are convicted felons today. And you may recall this end of the story. As a consequence of what God did, Liberia was embarrassed. Liberia was forced to put forth a moratorium or a hut on all adoptions to begin to review how they were sending our children overseas. And so, again, I'm not trying to give my resume, but go online and do some research, my brother, and you will see that you're not hearing from a man that just started being interested in the cause of Liberians. If you talk to Liberians in Rhode Island, they would tell you that I've been up to Rhode Island to fight for the cause of a brother that was facing life in prison unjustly for something he didn't do. I also volunteered for that if you talk to Liberians in New Jersey, and on and on and on. But this is not something new. This is not the first time I've gotten involved in such causes. And so that's why I have developed some grit and intestinal fortitude and confidence and faith in Almighty God that he will see us through with this cause, as he has seen us through with other causes involving our people.
All right. Okay, let's hear back from, I believe this is Mahmoud, 2127. Could you please state your name again, your quick follow-up, 2127?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kafuma. This is Mahmoud from Maryland.
Mahmoud, that's what I thought. Okay, quickly.
Yeah, from Maryland. I'm just trying to make some comment on this statement from our sister I called from D.C. She's the only one that there have not been any report of somebody being killed, but in life or in our studies, there are we call it high coded cases where you got top government officials involved, characters involved into it. You got to be wise how you move. It's not a kind of case that you call that you're dealing with somebody down there. You got top officials that are accused of a crime, accused of a hard crime where the characters are sick, and you try to bring them out. There's a need that you be careful how you approach it. It's not like because they don't have the record of killing, but you could be snatched or you won't know who did it. Just for instance, the cases that Honorable Judge Johnson indicated that the director of the airport, as I followed in his last, report, resident life was cut off. That's one insecurity. And her life was cut off, and security guys, security personnel were changed. In that instance, what comes to your mind in Liberia that we know what has happened there, those of us that lived there during the war, after the war? What comes into your mind is your life is not secure. You are an official of government. You're not just a layman. That you come to your house and need everything changed, light off. That house should be lighted up 24/7, and you change security personnel. That sends a signal to your mind that your life is at stake. So she also needs to learn that it is not that her brother is a threat of facing, justice in Liberia, but it's a self-preservation. And God gave you wisdom to use it at times. Because if you don't use it wisely, you go first. You will die as a coward. You will not be able to give your story. So she needs to understand that it is not that he's trying to make the government accolade, or the government does not have the record on killing, but the government has record on detaining people. Front page Africa, editor is today facing, there's a problem in our country with the justice minister because of situation that you jail somebody, keep them in jail because they don't have strength. And that's one of the ways people suppress people. Okay. She should take into consideration all these factors and look at it and don't look at Judge Johnson as not facing the Liberian government, but he also has to be very careful how he approaches the issue. And lastly, this government, as I was reading a paper, we need to be very outspoken about what is going on in our country. This government is advising another president of another country now to speak against corruption during an election period. Our president, a certain president, is advising another president, the Malawian president, the president of Malawi, who is prosecuting our government for corruption. And she's advising the president not to take it because the election is nearer. Then you compare the leadership we're talking about in our country. When will we come out of it? If we don't speak it up, if we don't say these things that are not right in our country. These are just some of the points I want to stress. Thank you very much.
All right, Mahmoud, we're going to leave it there. Judge Johnson?
I appreciate the brother's spirit and strength. That's the kind of attitude that we need. He even brought up additional points in response to the sister that talked earlier. Even those points I had even forgotten about, the lights being cut off, the water being cut off, the familiar security that we had established a relationship with being replaced without explanation, the chief of security there advising that the government had done this, they had threatened, and on and on. So, yeah, I totally agree with them. Those things make it very clear.
Okay, well, since too many references were made to the sister, she's obviously made a comeback in the queue to respond to some of the allegations, but we'll get to her shortly here. Let's hear from Keita. Keita again, Broken Park. Mr. Keita, welcome back to the show quickly.
Okay,
hello?
Thank you very much, Mr. Akromah. How are you? I'm here. I'm following the show.
All right.
Thank you very much. I'm in support of democratic change, like some of the callers have said. But until they still have a time in office, whether we can go by impeachment proceeding, that comes from the legislature. But, whenever people pitch against something, they look for alternatives. And if one were to ask whether Judge Johnson is prepared to be an alternative in 2017, what would be your answer to the comment?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Judge Johnson, what better than that? Judge Johnson.
President Attorney Judge Johnson. Well, my brother, right now my assignment, one of the things that two things that I appreciate so much that I've learned from America. Number one is what I call the power of the resume. As many of us know in America, when you go apply for a job, one of the things they quickly want to see is for you to fill out an application, putting your resume, where you've been, where you've worked. It's not a complete indication of what you will do, but certainly looking at one's past, getting some idea of one's heart can kind of give you some indication of what one will do in the present and potentially in the future. The other thing is the division of labor. That's the other thing that I've learned and appreciated here in America, that people have different jobs they have to do. They have different lanes they have to stay in. They do their job for that season, and if it be that the job changes, then they move on to another job. They don't cross over and try to interfere with other jobs and so forth. And so, while I laugh at the title, Attorney Judge President Johnson, right now, my job, my task, my assignment I believe, from God is to bring to light these revelations as we have been doing. That's what I'm going to continue to do. That's what I'm going to do until we're done with all the recordings that we have. And whatever it is that God would have me do after that, I would be ready and willing to go forward and do those things. As I mentioned, for the past 10 years plus, my job, my assignment has not been to come out in the public limelight and deal with the government, but it has been serving Liberians, fighting for the rights of Liberians, not just in Georgia, where I've lived for many, many, many years and served for many, many years, but then eventually God had me go, as I said, to Oklahoma, Rhode Island, New Jersey, other states to volunteer. You're talking expensive air travel, expensive hotels, time lost from work, etc., but to volunteer for the cause of our people. So right now, that's my assignment. That's the lane that I'm in, and I'm grateful to God for that opportunity. And if he wants me to do something else, then I will do it, and to God be the glory.
All right. Thanks again. Sia, welcome back. What do you say to Mahmoud in Maryland?
Well, I'm just going to maintain my position that at this time, there is no record of democide in Liberia. So I understand Judge Johnson's position. I understand Ellen Cochran's position. Whatever they've done for their own personal reasons, perhaps to aggrandize their platforms. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, I am not going to incite riot in the minds of the people and talk about change when we know, as everyone has clearly identified or stated, change comes in many forms, and are we ready for such change? But Mahmoud has his opinion. I respect that. Judge Johnson has his position. I respect that. But I do not have to agree with it. And at this time, I maintain that I have yet to know that the government is sponsoring killings because one is in political opposition to the government's views or so forth. I mean, we know President Johnson's relief and her power moves and the duplicity of her government in the judiciary. We know that. It's evident. It's out there. But at the same time, let us not fuse speculations into such commentary. It's not really worth it. I mean, our political culture in Liberia must change. And certainly everyone thought, members of the intelligentsia as well as the laymen in Liberia thought Madam Sirleaf will be that voice of change or reason. It has not been the case. She's been in power for, 7 years or so. But at the same time, she cannot be blamed for all that is happening in Liberia, although she is no different at this point in terms of her governance or her leadership than her predecessors. So that's just it. I don't want to just continue the debate, but I can just say the reason I continue to ask or push this issue is that Judge Johnson is saying that folks told him his life was endangered, and that is true. But under which conditions? The reason or the method in which that information was obtained, I just can't just accept that because, again, they were done surreptitiously, and because of that, I just don't find it credible. But it may be a fact. I'm not sure. I can't verify it. So that's all. Thank you all. Good evening.
Okay. Thank you, Sia. I don't believe George has anything to add to that, so you made your point clear.
Again to Sia, in this country and in every country where there is red-blooded human beings, if somebody has a gun, the gun is loaded, they point the gun at you, they tell you that they're going to get rid of you, you're not required to wait for them to pull the trigger before you assume that they're trying to kill you. You are authorized at that point, if you have your gun, to shoot them first. And so if you're saying you haven't heard the gun go off or they didn't pull the trigger, therefore, why are we accusing them of murder or attempted murder, then that's a new phenomenon that you're introducing. Again, if somebody has a knife and they're yelling, and they're coming at you with the knife, you're not required to wait to see whether they would stab you and where they would put the knife before you can stab them or run or flee for your safety or before they would be charged with attempted murder. So the argument she's bringing forth, the position she's bringing forth, it's sort of brand new that I never heard of anywhere on earth. Additionally, she mentioned no genocide. Genocide gets to the point where many people have been killed, but one person being killed is enough. So we don't have to wait till genocide come about. We don't have to wait till the knife goes into the person. We don't have to wait till the trigger is pulled before we accuse the person of attempted murder.
Okay. Folks, should I remind you that we've been here exactly 2 hours, 17 minutes. And I know Judge Melvin Johnson was on another show last night, and I've been on another one earlier today. Not to even mention that we are over the 2 hours limit, so we got to be wrapping up here, at least another 20 minutes, I'll say, so that we can all get some rest for Monday, tomorrow. All right, so let's keep the questions brief, and if it helps, let's do them one at a time so we can get everyone out of here. Let's take one from, I believe this is Mohammed Dukle from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Mr. Dukle, welcome to the show. Your question, comment, or concern for Judge Johnson.
Thank you very much, Kafuma. This is Mohammed Dukle from Minnesota, Minneapolis. Judge Johnson, you were on the Diaspora Forum the last time, and I asked you why there was no advertisement for the contract that was given to the foreign company. And you said that President Selig said that she wanted urgent issues on the airport so that the airport should be fixed. And you also mentioned that the finance minister, Amara Kone, had connection with the Senegalese brother who also own another company. And now you are now advocating against corruption in Liberia. I wonder why you did not raise any red flag during those days when that contract was issued to those people without passing through the PCCA.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I don't know what the PPA and PA is. Air France, my brother, got stuck in the asphalt, in the mud in Liberia. They had to unload all of their passengers in Liberia who did not plan to be in Liberia. These people were in transit. They had to unload them. They had to fly in parts to repair the part that broke in the mud in the pothole, and that caused an embarrassment for the country. Pursuant to that, the president ordered, and honestly, she did not even need to order. Even if she had not ordered, I think people working at the airport should have looked at it as an emergency to get some things done, but that was what happened. And so, I don't even know where you're coming from with diaspora not being approved and why did I not speak up and so forth. The issue has never been diaspora's approval or lack of approval. If that has been the issue, the dossier that we've released, it has memorandums in there, has emails where it is talked about very clearly by the Minister of Transport, Eugene Nambwe, Musa Ability, the chairman of the board, Ambassador Edward Dunn, Edward McLean, Minister of State for Presidential Affairs. They all make reference to the directive of the president that it is embarrassing for international commercial airlines to be stuck in potholes at the airport and be stuck in the mud. And so the effort to make the repairs of the pothole and bring in the right expertise in asphalt and soil testing, et cetera, those efforts needs to be double. And so that's how the whole Diaspora Consulting thing came into being. And yes, Amara Konan did bring the principle of diaspora to the Ministry of Planning when he worked there. There's all kind of documentation about that. He has admitted that publicly. So again, I don't, there's a lot of things you're asserting that are not factual, that it's very clear that you're misinformed or underinformed about what had happened.
Okay. I hope everyone knows by now that Judge Melvin Johnson's first appearance on here has been uploaded on YouTube for a long time now. So if you missed that show, all you have to do is to get on the internet, go to YouTube and put in LIBERIAN Diaspora Forum, you will see his first appearance, and so will this one be a matter of days here. This appearance and the one before this one, Harry Grief, will all be uploaded in the next 2 or 3 days. With that said, we finish the callers, the people with the queue here, follow-up caller mostly, and then we can call it a night. Let's hear back from Josh Toto. Mr. Toto, welcome back to the show. What's your follow-up question quickly?
Yeah, thank you, Kafuba. And also thank you, George Melvin Johnson, for stressing out a key point. The only point I want to raise or concern is the level of we, the diaspora Liberians, especially that going back home to take our government position, and in terms of corruption, I think they have been levying against mostly against our diaspora Liberia. And I believe, I don't know, this out of Eddie Cochran, whether she's an American citizen or how she got a job or whether she went through confirmation process. I don't know the detail of that. But I believe that we have a constitution in Liberia that does not support dual citizenship. And American or European that also work in Liberia to hold a job, that's a key violation of the constitution of Liberia. And it speaks against corruption. And so I would like to encourage George Johnson, while at the same time you're going through the process of sport corruption in Liberia, you should look at all sectors that you go in the process that encouraging corruption in Liberia. People holding dual citizenship in Liberia, holding position, or bribing lawmakers to go through confirmation hearing just to hold position in Liberia. They said that's a corruption also too. So I just want to encourage the Honorable Judge to other aspects in the fight also to tackle the corruption in Liberia. That's the point I wanted to raise.
All right. Thank you for raising that. The judge, any comment, Judge?
My brother, I hear your point. As I've said repeatedly, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to stay on my assignment. When that assignment is done, whatever the good Lord will have me do, if it be to tackle other points or add other points to it, then I will. I want to touch on briefly this pretextual dual citizenship issue that continues to come up. I say pretextual because it is an excuse. Dual citizenship or multiple citizenship is not the problem in Liberia. There are many Liberians that fled the war, that left before the war, and had to do what they had to do in other countries to feed their family and even support some of the same people who are back in Liberia that are now talking against dual citizenship. The problem isn't dual citizenship. The problem is the heart of our people. The problem is the complacency of our people. The problem is the lack of gumption, lack of intestinal fortitude, and the inability to man up and to woman up. And we need to quit using passport, a book, as an excuse to carry out the aims and objectives that we have. If we have an aim or an objective that we want to express, let's be man or woman enough and speak about it and not attempt to hide behind passport from the U.S. or from Ghana or any other country. That is an excuse that we need to stop using.
All right. I'm not sure if... Angelina, did you have a question? Cooper? Hello? Cooper, did you have a question? All right, maybe not. All right, let's hear again from 2318-952 area code. I forgot what your name was. Your name and a quick follow-up question, comment, or concern.
Yeah, Alexander Walker is my name. I just want to say something concerning what our sister said about inciting people and what I feel.
We don't have a whole lot of time this time.
No, I know. I just say what I'm being very quick here. Okay. I'm on my way to Liberia next week, and part of my mission in Liberia will be to educate people on some of the ills in our society. It might sound inciting people, but I think it is incumbent on those of us who might know or see things living from a brighter side than some of our brothers and sisters because of the opportunity we had to get education and what have you. It is incumbent on us to open their eyes and teach them what is wrong in our society and how to address it. So if anybody would see that as inciting, sorry, I think you're getting it wrong. But I think what Mr. Johnson has done, I commend him, and trust me, anything some of us can do to educate our people and open them up, some of us will do it. And I'm starting mine this week when I reach Liberia.
Thank you.
Yeah. My brother, thank you for the comment. You know, many years ago in this country when Martin Luther King stood up and started to take stands and do things and lead people in an unprecedented manner, many people thought that he was inciting the people and that he was wrong in doing so. In fact, black people here threatened his life. Black people here criticized him as well as white people did. Many years ago when Nelson Mandela stood up to do the same for his people in his country, he was also criticized and people felt he was inciting the people and so forth. You know, to that I say, to whom much is given, much is required. I feel a responsibility to incite our people in the right direction to bring about change. Somebody once said that if you keep doing what you have been doing, that you will keep getting what you have been getting. That it is insanity to keep doing what you've been doing and expect something differently. If you keep planting cassava and every time it's time for harvest, you go expecting to get edible and you're disappointed that you don't get edible, I think the local farmers and others there would think you're crazy. And so, yes, if it's being viewed, it's being interpreted as this is a call, this is an incitement to our people to get up and grow some gumption and some intestinal fortitude, so be it. Many great men in history and women in history have been criticized for the same. And so if today we will stand criticized for that, we will gladly accept those criticisms.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dukley, Canada, final thought for the night. Quickly.
Hello?
Yeah, hello. Your final thoughts for the night.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Again, thank you very much, Kafuma, and once again, thanks to Judge Johnson. I just wanted to follow up on my previous comments. I know the judge is a jurist by training, and so one of the key things that he relies on in what he does is evidence, and some of those evidence could be circumstantial, and some could be material. So, with that said, I just want to remind the judge that in the recording of the chief of police, there's nowhere in that recording that the word murder is mentioned. The reason why I'm mentioning it is that some of the things that he is interpreting to mean death can also be interpreted to mean the contrary, meaning I found those words to be relative, meaning anyone can interpret them the way they feel justify their position. Having said that, I want to remind the judge that when we talk about Liberia, politically speaking, no one is not aware of the fact that the influence the American government has in Liberia. I'm just saying this as a reference point to my previous comment that I had made earlier, which is, with the case being publicized the way it has been, there's absolutely no reason why the Salif government will want to kill them or assassinate them, even with all the circumstantial evidence that he wants to depend on. So, politically speaking, if you look at the politics of Liberia, the influence of U.S. in Liberia is enormous, to the point where you can even venture saying they determine who becomes and who don't become leader in Liberia. That's how much influence they have. With that said, to me as a jurist, it makes your defense very suspect of your intention when you lay out all these things and interpret some of those comments to mean, what you have made them to be, in this case, death, etc., etc. But, if we go by the face of it, there's nowhere there that says arrest him, have him killed. even though you have been inferring to that over and over and over, even from your previous. So I think if you add up all the evidences that have been mentioned so far, your defense doesn't hold up as far as I can tell.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, me pointing out the president's desire to capture us and to have us killed is not a defense to the charge of us making up Diaspora Consulting as a fake company. The defense to whether Diaspora Consulting is fake is in the documentation that I've made reference to repeatedly, the contracts, the emails that point out that 4 different engineers from Diaspora had met with Public Works, they met with the technical staff, they met with SSF, they met with airport officials, Minister of Transport, etc. That would be more of a defense to whether or not we made up this fake company. Regarding the safety and whether anybody said murder, my brother, if the chief of airport security that has no relation to me or Ellen Corcoran makes it very clear that government officials threaten him, they turn off your electricity, they turn off your water, they replace the security that you're familiar with some stranger standing there with weapon. The Minister of Defense tells you people are plotting against you, signing death warrant. The police director comes on and tells you about, you being captured, etc. If you, in your right mind or even left mind, if there is a left mind, since we're towards the end of the show, I guess I could be somewhat facetious. But if anybody in your right mind or your left mind cannot read the writing on the wall, if you don't have enough wisdom to know that your life is in danger, then, my brother, I don't know what else to tell you. As I said previously, in any society on earth, when you see somebody with a knife and they say hi and they're coming towards you with that knife, no society requires you to wait to be murdered before you can say the person intended to murder you. No society requires you to wait for the knife to make contact with you. At that point, you're authorized to clearly see that there's an attempt to murder you, and you're authorized to exercise wisdom and defend yourself. And so that's what we did.
Okay, thank you. Kuba, Anjali, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. This is Angelique from Champlin, Minnesota. I actually have a comment, and it's actually in reference to the same tapes. I've listened to the tapes that was put on Front Page Africa from the Minister of Defense to the police director, to even quite recently the article about Clarice Jah. And what I'm puzzled by, and I will hope that the judge can clarify it, is I've listened to these tapes, and when I'm listening to them, I'm actually listening to see where how these tapes will exonerate you guys from what has been from the charges. And all I hear in these tapes is like people just trying to show that, okay, we are not the only corrupt ones, or we are not the only ones that stole, but over here, look at these tapes. Brani Samukai said people steal. Brani Samukai said this, or Chris Massaquoi said that, or Clarice Jah said this. And I'm really not concerned. Everybody's saying this, and I'm really concerned about corruption, but I'm baffled by why these tapes are being played right now, because it does not exonerate you guys in any way. There's not one of those tapes on there that said that tells me that you and Ellen are innocent. It only shows to me that there are also other corrupt people in Liberia. So if you're going to continue to play these tapes, please make sure that the tapes that you're playing in the future are tapes that clears your name. Because any sensible person that listens to these tapes, I'm sorry, but they really don't clear your name. They only implicate other people into corruption in Liberia.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, it's always refreshing to hear another sister's voice and participating in the process. My sister, if you listen to, for instance, the defense minister tape, Brani Samukai, he says that he investigated. He talked to these government officials, and they told him that they can put their heads on chopping board, that we did not take a dime. I don't know what else you would need to hear. These are the same officials that are accusing us subsequently of taking a dime. Additionally, the accusation has to do with Diaspora Consulting. We've assembled stuff that shows clearly that this company is not fake, that there are people that existed, they came to Liberia, and that have worked. The judge that is on the case has chastised the government for not presenting any evidence. So when you take all of those things, I mean, just if you disregard the judge, you disregard the 300-page dossier. If all you do is listen to Brani Samukai, he's the Minister of Defense. He says clearly that he talked to all these officials, he investigated. He knows how to investigate. They told him they can put their head on a chopping board. You being from Liberia, you know when a Liberian person says they can put their head on a chopping board, that usually indicates that they're serious. So I don't know if you missed that in the recording. Perhaps go back and listen to it, and you will hear him say that.
Okay, all right. Well, congratulations. Looks like we made it. So we'll take a final last call from Mohammed Dukley in Minneapolis again, and then that will be our last call for tonight. And I guess we'll go from there. Mr. Dukley, please keep it brief. We're out of time. Your follow-up question, comment, or concern?
Yes. Oh, Judge Johnson, it appears that you are comparing yourself with Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King. But now my concern about you is this. Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, they were all in their country. They faced the government. And they saw a change in the government of which they were talking against. But you are out of the country of Liberia. Why can't you go in Liberia and face the government and see the change in Liberia? And when you were in Liberia, you saw all these things that were there, like giving contracts without the PPCA agreement, and you did not raise any concern. Doesn't it sound that you are a hypocrite?
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, this brother now come up with his PPCA. I don't know what the PPCA is talking about. While we were in Liberia, while we were still in Liberia, while we were working in Liberia, we played recordings on the radio, on the airwaves in Liberia. We began to speak against government officials about corruption in Liberia. We began this process that we're still carrying on now of exposing corruption, exposing government officials. We did this in Liberia in January 2013. We're now in February 2014. So we started doing this over a year ago while we were in Liberia. So, Brother Dukley, we're not just now doing it because we fled Liberia or because we're out of Liberia. Again, this is something we started doing in Liberia. So my wish is that you would kind of get informed before you jump to some of these conclusions and try to get some of the facts straight, try to follow the story more closely, read a little bit more, and be informed. Your involvement, your participation is appreciated. It's something we need. Your vigor is felt, is appreciated. But, try to get informed on the issues, try to get the facts down, and then, I think that energy can be better directed.
Emmanuel, final thought, last thought, final thought for the night, quickly. Emmanuel, 5756.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, call quickly.
Hello?
All your text messages, yeah.
Okay.
Hello?
Just one quick question for the Honorable Judge. From all of the inferences, it tells me, and which of course from the newspaper writing, tells me there must have been some intimate relationship between the Honorable Judge, who happens to be a consultant, so to speak, at RIA and the managing director of RIA. My question is, with that relationship, don't you see that as a conflict of interest where you serving as in a consultative role and having a personal relationship with the managing director at a time, to the extent where decisions are being made by the pair?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, my brother, there's been a lot of rumors in the media that Ellen Corcoran was married to me, that she's my fiance, she's my girlfriend. There's so many different stories that have come out. Some of the story says that we took $3 million. Some of the story said we took $500,000. Some of the story says 300,000. Some of the story printed in Liberia said that we were trafficking cocaine. We were dealing drugs through the airport. Some of the story says that I wasn't a judge of merit, that I sold the blood of Liberian people in the U.S. I sold Liberian people cases to one county, and then that county crossed a deal with my home county, and that's how my home county made me judge, and on and on and on and on. The only thing I can tell you, there's been so many stories that are not true. What we have responded to, what we feel obligated to respond to, are what are in the bogus indictment with which we've been charged. And that indictment says that we made up a fake company. The company did not exist. That company did exist. We didn't make up the company. We met the officials one and only time when they came to Liberia. And so that's what I'm going to respond to. But all the other allegations, how long we've been married, how many children we have, and fiance, and on and on and on, and selling drugs, and fake judge, and selling Liberian people blood, if I give attention to those distractive stories that have come out and rumors, it'll get me off track. So my focus is to stay on track, deal with the issues, deal with what we've been charged with, and then stay on my assignment, stay on my lane to expose corruption in this government and of this president.
Thank you. Finally, Angelia Cooper, your final thought, very final thought.
Yes, I had to come back. The judge mentioned that Brownie Samukai said they say and they can put their name on the chopping board. Seriously, Judge, you work in America, and I read about you, and I'm pretty impressed by your credentials, but they say you are an American judge. I'm sure there was not one day you sat on that bench and gave and did anything based on they say. So, and Brownie Samukai is just one person in Liberia, so because he said it does not exonerate you guys from anything. So I would really hope that you step a little bit more deeper into proving your innocence instead of playing these tapes. And in reference to what Mr. Douglas said about Mandela and Martin Luther King, I kind of agree with him because those they were there. So I mean, if you guys really want to fight for our people, I think you need to be there fighting and not here on the phone with us.
All right.
My sister, I'm not fighting on the phone with you. If you feel that you're in a fight, then I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I'm not here on the phone to fight with you or with anybody else. I don't necessarily want to go down the Martin Luther King or the Mandela route, but those people use various tactics. Those people at times were exiled away from the people for which they were fighting. In the case of Mandela, he was exiled for 27 years. Martin Luther King was exiled several times by imprisonment and other measures. And so various tactics were used by those people, but God ultimately accomplished the purpose for those people's lives. When you talk about Brownie Samukai and me saying they say, when I said they, I was referencing Brownie Samukai having already named the finance minister, Amara Kone, already named the deputy minister, Judy Moore, already named the minister of state for presidential affairs, Edward McLean, already named the chairman of the board, Musa Ability. These are all people that we worked with in that government. And so when he said they, and I referenced that he had said they, he wasn't saying they say as in a rumor. He named specifically these people And then he mentioned putting head on chopping board to vouch for the fact that we had done nothing wrong. He went into details explaining to us for the first time that the reason they were plotting, the reason they were trying to sign our death warrant, using his words, were that there was $130 million that was slated for the airport to be used for construction at the airport. And these people had told him, Defense Minister Brani Samukai, that they knew we had done nothing wrong, but they were in fear that if we stayed there, based on the way we had already started operating at the gas station, closing corruption loophole, based on the way we started operating already with the VIP lounge, closing corruption loophole, based on the way we operated with the ghost employee phenomenon in Liberia, closing corruption loopholes, that these government officials told Brani Samukai that based on what they've seen from our actions already in the 2 months that we had been on the job, that they felt if we stayed there, they would not have access to the $130 million. Therefore, they had to get rid of us. So that's the day that he referred to, that I referred to, but it wasn't me saying they say, like you say, I say, that sort of thing, my sister. Nobody is fighting you. I hope you're not feeling like you're being fought. The only cause that we're fighting here is corruption and the cause of the people. And that's all we're fighting. We're not here to fight you, my sister, so don't feel like anybody's fighting you, okay?
Okay. Well, Josh, Melvin Johnson, we have made a safe landing. We've made it to the end of another program. Granted, some people just arriving. That's always the case, but we just cannot continue to do that. It's been way beyond 2 hours, so I will now return the floor to you again to do your closing remark for the night.
Brother Krama, let me thank you once more for the work you're doing. Somebody mentioned history, recording these things and taking note. I think also history is recording what the work you're doing, the staff that works along with you. Let me commend you and that staff for the opportunity for such a forum. As you mentioned, you hosted Greaves earlier, and you host many people. Such a forum of exchange is very important for the prosperity of our people. This is something that we must encourage. Let me thank the listening audience, those that are just joining, that are not able to pose your question, concern, or comment. Sorry that you're just joining us. Let me thank the people that came in and gave words of encouragement and support. It is helpful. It is noted. It helps to propel us to go forward to continue this assignment. Let me also applaud the people that came on with dissension, the sister. I hope you don't feel like I was here to fight you or fight anybody, but I appreciate your participation and your involvement. This is very important for Liberia and our prosperity. Again, Liberia is ranked highest in the region for infant mortality rate. That means babies who are yet born, babies who are newborn, are dying daily, hourly from sicknesses and diseases that are preventable and that are curable. For me, that's the picture. That's what I'm fighting against. I'm not fighting any individual. 90% plus of our people, our precious people, our people that God made and loves as much as he loves me and every one of us, 90% of those people are living below poverty. That means those people, many of them are using cardboard boxes that we discard in the U.S. without thinking. That is a precious commodity for people to use as shelter. That is what I'm fighting against. I'm not fighting against you, my sister, or any of the other callers. We have no hospitals. We have lack of hospitals, I should say. We have lack of good roads, lack of good bridges, schools, food, medicine, etc. Those are the things that we're fighting against. And so because Ellen Johnson Sirleaf occupies that position of misusing our resources, thereby preventing those resources to get to those babies that are dying, the potential of Liberia dying, the future of Liberia unrealized and dying. That is what we're fighting. That is the call. That is the assignment. To that assignment, by God's grace, Ellen Qualcomm and myself remain steadfast and faithful and by God's grace, we will see it through. So thank everybody for listening. The dialogue has been wonderful, but let it not just be about dialogue. Contact your legislature. One brother mentioned about going to the counties and so forth. Contact your legislatures. Tell them to get involved. Tell them to bring about a probe and independent investigation into these recordings. These recordings have nothing to do, in most instances, with Diaspora Consulting, whether it was a fake company. So they are empowered to bring forth additional probe and investigation into these recordings, and by doing so, they would not interfere with the bogus indictment and so-called extradition process that presumably has begun by the Liberian government. So we can get involved just based on these recordings. Liberia has to go forward. If somebody says, again, if you keep doing what you have been doing, you will keep getting what you have been getting. Liberia, we're tired of doing the same thing and expecting something differently. We observe our sister country, Ghana. We see the tremendous improvement, the strides they have made. We've seen the change in attitude of the citizenry there, how they applaud whenever the president and the government comes down and clamps and publicly exposes corruption and disposes of government officials. The entire country, they applauded. They're excited about it. That's the kind of energy that we need to have. We see how they hold their officials to a high level of accountability and respect. We see how they take hold of democracy, and they don't feel like the officials are the bosses, but indeed they are the bosses who put the officials in place to go forth and do the works for which they have elected them to do. So that is the mindset we should go forward with. Thank all of you. Let me praise Almighty God again, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, for the strength, the courage. As Brother Kafumba mentioned, this is one of, my goodness, maybe a dozen such shows since Monday that I've been on. Been up since 2:30 this morning, but to God be the glory. He's given us strength to go forward. Thank you, everybody. I love you, even to the people that dissented. I love you nevertheless. May God bless Liberia.
Thank you. And may God do so. Folks, there you have it. Let's have a wonderful night and prepare for Monday tomorrow. Good night.